This program was produced by Now You Know Media.
Topic 1. Introduction. This series of lectures is loosely based on a course I used to teach at the University of St. Mary of the Lake, which is Mundelein Seminary in Chicago. I became interested in preaching when Cardinal George put me on his preaching task force, which had a mandate to explore how to make preaching more effective. The course eventually became a book titled Christian Eloquence. In Christian Eloquence, I was really looking at how does one evangelize in contemporary context. And these lectures are related to that book, although they're not strictly based on it. My approach to the topic is informed by the Ressourcement School of Theology, and to some extent by the theology of Bernard Lonergan. Bernard Lonergan was a Jesuit and very influential, particularly in the English-speaking theological world. The Ressourcement School, which is primarily French, advocated returning to the sources of our tradition in order to facilitate responding to contemporary issues. By considering the successes of previous generations in evangelization, I think that we can come to better gauge how we are doing. Of course, this is only useful if we consider how the past differs from the present. So, in order to draw upon the past, you have to see what elements are similar and what elements are different. And I think as we move through this, you will be able to identify aspects of evangelization in the past that are relevant today and aspects that maybe aren't quite so relevant. Looking at various analogs or looking at these analogies or models drawn from history points to how we can appropriate our tradition in a creative manner. But the method does not and cannot provide a fixed or formulaic approach. And there are several reasons why. In fact, there are 5 reasons why. The first reason is that the gospel is always new. The gospel is always new. It's a living word. And as a living word, it adapts and changes. It brings to light new things. People don't like the word change, but in fact, we come to understand the gospel in new ways. So maybe the gospel doesn't change, but we do. But the gospel is always new. Number 2, cultures are in constant flux. The meaning of the gospel has a different meaning in different cultures. And we're going to see that over the history of the church, evangelical, evangelization, these terms have been understood in very different ways. As cultures adapt and change, how we understand what the good news is, how we understand how to be evangelical changes as well. And you can think about cultural changes just over the last 50 years in our country. There have been enormous changes in terms of race, in terms of gender, and the changes seem to continue to pile up. The third reason that you can't come to some sort of fixed evangelization is that events shape what's appropriate in terms of witnessing to the gospel. And events dictate what can or cannot be said, and you can see this even in everyday life. For example, I went to a Mass, which was supposed to be a celebratory event. It was actually for ordinations. And when the bishop stood up to preach, he looked out over this crowd of several hundred people and said, first words out of his mouth were, "I think that there are only as many people with goodwill as I could count on one hand in this diocese." So you can see how that would be an inappropriate context to make such a comment. Well, if you're in a context post-Katrina, say in New Orleans, how you present the gospel is going to be different if you're presenting the gospel in some place that's unaffected by disaster. If you're in an environment where people are struggling financially, or if you're in an environment where people are doing well financially, that will also affect how one presents the gospel. So as events take place, how one witnesses should appropriately adjust. The people in the audience, the fourth reason the gospel cannot be presented in a formulaic manner, is that the people in the audience are in different places. So if you're speaking to more than one person, if we're going to embark on this new evangelization that we've been asked to undertake, then you're going to be speaking to people who are at different places in their spiritual journey, people who are in different places in terms of social position, people who are healthy, people who are sick, people who know a great deal about the Scriptures, people who know very little. So because of the differences in the people in your audiences, you will find that evangelization has to constantly be adjusting.